Armoured fighting vehicles, or AFVs, are synonymous with operating in dirty and muddy environments. Consequently, as scale modelers, we have the pleasure of adding these dirt effects to our projects. Such weathering can be as simple as a thin layer of dust, to dirty and rusty washes from pools of stagnant water, or as extreme as completely covering every surface in thick wet mud. So there's an endless number of options to use depending on the story that you want to tell with your particular model project. There is probably 100 ways to weather the road wheels on AFVs, and there are numerous products in the marketplace to assist us with that goal. So let's have a look at two of the most popular options: acrylic products, that's water-based solution, and oil paints. So I'll use each product set to make three common outcomes: road wheels that are either dusty or mud washed, or finally heavily caked in mud. For this tutorial, I use a set of 135 scale Panzer II road wheels that I've painted in Panzer Grey, and have added some mild weathering to the rubber so that we can work with the road wheels that will show a little bit of age and use. It's kind of a middle road position to start with, so that we can show road wheels with some typical or even a little harsh wear. So in preparation for this tutorial, I have taken some chips and nicks out of the rubber sections using a sharp hobby knife. The first option I'll demonstrate is a dry dusty look. Using AK's landing gear dust effect and an old worn brush, I stipple on the product rather unevenly. I'm looking to achieve varying degrees of opacity, which will help me to achieve a much more realistic finish. On the contact surface of the wheel, I make sure I paint into the various cracks and cuts. This is an important step which will become more evident later on as I rub back the surface after the product has dried. I don't need to be too neat with the application, just ensure that there's sufficient wash applied and that it's applied uniformly but not evenly. It won't look too pretty at this stage, but look, that's perfectly okay. We're going to tidy up shortly. Once the dust wash is dry, I grab a stiff bristled brush to rub back the wash. There are various effects that we can achieve here, from heavy dust coverage to a very light cover. Obviously the choice is yours, and it will depend on the project you're working on, but I'm simply going to demonstrate here the technique that I use and therefore one possible outcome from it. Moving the brush from the centre outwards, I gently remove some of the wash until I've achieved the desired look. By using the edge of the bristles, the brush will skip over any raised details, leaving dust wash up against them. The same technique is used on the contact surface of the rubber, and here I want to leave the surface somewhat murky without leaving large deposits, as they would be rubbed back by the contact between the rubber and the tracks. And the final result, a tired and dusty looking road wheel. The bright ring is unique to the Panzer II and has a polished appearance because it's rubbed back by the track guide horns. The next option is to replicate a muddy wash over the road wheels. This could be the result of driving through large pools of muddy water, so where dust effects would be very light tones, here I need to step up the colour into mid-tones to support a much wetter look. Using Vallejo European dust wash, I apply it to the surface of the road wheels. The wash has a high surface tension, so it clings to all the raised surfaces, and this certainly assists us with this process. I also add the wash to other surfaces and change their appearance, because the wash would have been across the entire road wheel. Acrylics often form hard edges when they dry, but I'll be using multiple applications which will soften those edges. Once the first layer is dry, I can then add some of the AK landing gear dust effect to create layered effects. This could be done by either painting or speckling, and it depends on the effect that you want to create. These additional layers in different tones add to the model and are important weathering techniques to add realism to in-service vehicles. I don't need to be very neat in the application here, but I do need to use control. I need to put the wash exactly where I need it. Just slapping it on, well, it's not going to give you that Gucci result that you're after. I work the wash into the cuts and nicks in the rubber surface. Again, the aim here is just to add layers of age and use. And that's followed by the addition of light dust work into the road wheel surface itself. And control again is important here because I'm just going to add a little bit of light dust for the effect. Next step is another wash of the European dust tone. Once that dries, we have a dirty wheel that has the appearance of having been through a dirty, muddy wash. Now, something that can assist us with using acrylics is water, surprisingly. By pre-wetting the surface, it's possible to minimise the tide marks from the hard edges that acrylics can form. And retarder agents added to the wash will also slow down drying and increase their workable time. So depending on how fast you work, these may be solutions to some possible issues that you could have with using acrylics. Don't forget the rubber contact surfaces, they're really important to sell the effect. As I did earlier, work the wash into the surface so it shifts the colour without dominating the rubber black colour itself. And that should leave us with a road wheel that has a murky brown appearance with layers of undefined wear and tear. And with the contact ring polished with graphite, this is a convincing result. Moving on to the third option, using acrylics, I'll prepare a very muddy road wheel. Other than the fact that if this was being prepared as part of a diorama and we needed to match the colour and tones being used in the earth and groundworks, when weathering for heavy mud, we must apply mud in a direct relation to how it would stick to the operational vehicle. So study your references. Don't simply slap it on everywhere because it's just going to look clownish and without any thought. In this example, whilst I'm certainly adding a heavy mud cover, I'm working it towards the outer rim of the road wheel. And that's because as the wheel turns, the mud will be spun outwards due to the centrifugal force acting on the wheel. If the wheel spins quickly, the mud will likely move outwards quickly and pile up. So we should take this into account when applying the mud paste. Once I've applied the lighter mud paste, I can then blend it into the surface of the road wheel using water. This blending process allows me to mix the paste and move it around, adjust its components and achieve a realistic look. I can then add mud paste to the outer edge of the rubber, and on this particular Panzer II wheel, the guide horns and the tracks will knock away mud deposits around the outer edges, so it would not be accurate to add them in any great depth here. Also, this paste will leave the surface with a sheen to it, which works really well when what we're aiming to produce is a muddy, wet look. Whilst the mud paste is still wet, I want to wet blend some more of the dust wash. This adds some variation to the colour on top of that, which I will also need to blend some of the darker mud wash. This adds the appearance of some mud being drier, the light mud wash, and some mud which will appear to still be quite wet, the darker mud wash. The story we tell is told through the weathering that we apply, so it's worth considering where and how we use these washes and pastes. And I do apologise because I don't want to sound too preachy about this, but the key here is doing your research before you go and apply these pastes. Know what you want to achieve and use the techniques thought out well to achieve the end result you're looking for. The final product is a muddy, wet looking road wheel suitable for an equally muddy tank. Now we move over to oil paints. As with all oil paint sessions, let's begin with applying some thinner in order to condition the paint surface. I'm going to produce the same three options as I did with the acrylics, so first up is a dry dusty look. Using a wash of 502 Abteilung light mud, I apply it using a similar technique as we did with the acrylics. However, it's important to use a higher opacity with oils. So let's get some colour down so that as we shift into blending the oil paint, we don't lose that opacity. Whilst I am laying the paint down a little thin on the road wheel body itself, I do increase the opacity on the outer rubber edge, because this is a key area as it would have a lot of dust settle against the raised rim. Using a light angular brush, yeah, this one's seen better days, I use the sides of the bristles to blend the oil paint from the centre of the wheel outwards towards the rim. I want to leave a wash of colour against the raised surfaces. The strength of oil paint is clearly evident in this process. Their very long work time, ability to be seamlessly blended, and their ease of use makes them an absolute favourite for these kind of tasks. On the contact surface of the rubber, I'm scrubbing the oil paint so that it leaves the lightest of coats to simulate dust, but does not leave clumps. Importantly again, leave paint in the chips and the nicks. And here we have the basis of a dusty road wheel, really suitable for, say, the eastern front in summer. Option 2, just like before, is a dirty muddy wash over the road wheel. This type of weathering can see us produce almost any colour of mud wash. Using oils, you're not limited by what's in a pre-mixed bottle. You can lay down a handful of oil paints on a palette, then mix them in almost an infinite number of colour choices. For this tutorial, I'm just going to use 502 Abteilung Earth. It's a great brownish yellowish mud colour that will dry to a mid-brownish yellowish tone. It's really a wonderful colour that's got a lot of uses in so many circumstances. Like in the previous option, I'm applying a wash of colour and I'll be careful to adjust the opacity as required. So by now, you'll notice the similarity in all of these processes as I've moved from option to option during this tutorial. Each option has a basis in just a couple of individual techniques. And that's why I love to teach these, because you don't need to learn a raft of complicated processes. It's as easy as 2 or 3 techniques in total, using a handful of products that you get to choose on the basis of what you're most comfortable in using. Once again, we blend the oil paint outwards to the wheel rim, leaving a build-up of oil paint at the raised details. The rubber contact surfaces again receive a wash, and we make sure to push the paint into the cracks and nicks. Blending a small amount of light mud oil paint, we add those important age layers once again. Then back to blending the oils onto the road wheel surface until we get the look that we're after. This wheel presents as one that's after a wash of muddy water and dirt. Really, it's a perfect base to start a Normandy AFV weathering process. Finally, the last option to present to you, a heavy mud effect. It's obvious that oil paints do not have the body to be able to replicate mud. Not on their own anyway. So here I'm going to lean on dry pigments. Some people don't like using dry pigments, and look, that's okay, that's your personal choice. Maybe you can use acrylic mud paste to build the base layer of the heavy mud. That's entirely up to you. You'll just need to use a colour that's going to be sympathetic to the oil paints that you're going to apply on top. There's no point painting it in a white acrylic base and then paint oil paint over the top, it's just not going to work. First step is to apply the dry pigments here. I'm using a custom mix of mid-tones. This gives me a great starting point. The key to oil paint rendering is to always move from light to dark tones when applying them. So I apply the same principle when I'm using dry pigments. Start with mid-tones of the pigment. I can always add dark tones later if I think I need to make the mix look a little more wet. I can add those dark tones to pump that up a little bit. Once I've built up a base of dry pigments, I then begin to add oil paint to get colour and tone variation that represent the wet or semi-wet look I'm after. Here the choices really are endless, and it's a great way to add lots of variation to the road wheels on your AFV. The key point here, work in layers. Do not try and get this in one pass, you can't get it straight out of the gate. Best results will be achieved using lots of colour variation and multiple passes. Work slowly but methodically. Using some thinner on a blending brush, you can remove some of the mud from the rubber contact surfaces, and this again improves the realism in your presentation. And just like the other wheels, finish off by working mud into the rubber chips and nicks. And there you have it, a great looking heavy mud affected wheel. The best thing about weathering road wheels is that we do not want them all to look exactly the same. These examples in this tutorial show how the different methods and products can actually produce similar outcomes. The power in the techniques demonstrated here is that you as the model maker can produce realistic weathering outcomes with absolute control over the process and results. A little over a month ago I launched my Patreon page, which is open to anyone to join. And for a very low monthly subscription fee, you could join the current members who have access to my workbench, my project planning, high definition digital photos as I complete my projects, reference material that I use for those projects, and early access to video content for this channel, and now merch, and so much more. My patrons also have direct access to me if they want to DM me about anything they care to talk about. And that's especially useful if you'd like some guidance or feedback about your own projects. Also launched last month is our online merch store. So I have a group of products available for anyone to purchase, and the designs will continue to grow as time permits. By purchasing these products, you'll not only be able to wear some of the coolest new branded merch in the hobby, but you'll be helping me to pay for the costs in producing the content that you're currently watching on this channel. And to my awesome Patreon members and channel subscribers, thank you. Your ongoing support is very much appreciated. And for the 83% of viewers who are not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'd like to reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and really only your support's going to make that happen. So until next week, take care, keep making models, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.